Welcome to Ladies Talking Leafs. I'm Chris.
And I'm Sil.
And it's our final podcast for the 2024-25 regular season, and we're looking forward to a long playoff run for our Leafs. Starting off the show today with our condolences to the family and friends of former Leafs general manager and scout Gerry McNamara. He passed away on Friday at the age of 90.
McNamara was the Leafs scout who discovered Leafs legendary defenseman Börje Salming and helped to open doors for other European players to play in the NHL. He also drafted another legendary Leaf, Wendell Clark, first overall in 1985.
Yes, and I'm pointing to my jersey in the back here for people that are listening on their apps. But yeah, and if you haven't yet, we highly recommend that you watch the TV series Börje, which tells the life story of Börje Salming. Jason Priestley plays Gerry McNamara in the series, and the story of how he went to Sweden in 1972 to scout a goaltender before he noticed Börje Salming and fellow countryman Inga Hamberstrom. So that, it's a great, he actually laughed about Jason Priestley being, playing him in the movie. He told, our, hockey historian Paul Patsku about that. He thought it was funny that he was playing him, and he really got a kick out of when Jason Priestley apparently went to interview him to try and see how he could emulate him better in the series. So yeah, but anyway, it's definitely sad for the Leafs organization, and they did honor him on Saturday during the Habs game. So rest in peace, Gerry McNamara.
Mm-hmm. And now on that note, it's time to get on with our show. And we're going to start off with our final Ladies Talking Leafs highlight reel for the 24-25 regular season. And for our third period segment, we welcome to the show host of Amazon Prime Monday Night Hockey and CBC Sports, Andi Petrillo. So without any further ado, let's talk Leafs.
All right. So after the brutal game versus the Panthers, I was worried that we would not have any highlight reel material for this segment, but the Leafs got it going the rest of the week. It's time to roll the Ladies Talking Leafs highlight reel. Let's roll it.
All right. Coming in at number 3, Mitch Marner with his overtime winner versus Montreal, which is his 7th career OT game winner. It was a beauty play to come off the bench and shoot it past Habs goaltender Jacob Dobish. That was point number 98 for Marner, and he got his 99th point versus the Canes as we are recording on Sunday right after the game. So he's got 2 games left to get to point 100.
Yeah, and he has to do it. It's just, I mean, so. 2 games.
It's got to be the year. Come on, it's like a contract year.
Yeah.
If there's ever going to be a time where he gets it, it should be this year.
And I think Matthews is really, well, the whole team pulls for him, but obviously Matthews playing with him as a centerman for so long. I think they're going to get it done, and I hope it's in Buffalo with all the Leaf fans there on Tuesday night. So we'll see.
That would be fitting.
Yeah.
Give some of those people who can't get all the way to Toronto, who go there to watch the Leafs, have something fun happen in front of them.
Yeah, and not many fun moments there in Buffalo. So
that's for darn sure.
Yeah, so this would be a great way to give those fans a special moment.
Mm-hmm.
All right, coming in number 2, the goalies, because both of them have been fantastic this week, and it's so great to see. It's at the right time, perfect time for these 2 goalies. So both Anthony Stolarz and Joseph Woll had strong games this week. Stolarz has a 7-game winning streak now going after the wins versus the Lightning and the Habs, and he got the shutout versus the Habs. So that's a great thing. And then Joseph Woll was the only reason the score was close in the game versus the Panthers, stopping 34 of 36 shots. And versus Carolina, Woll also kept the Leafs in the game in that first period. They came out flat, which, I mean, it was understandable.
I don't even understand what they were thinking with scheduling a back-to-back like this.
And
2 back-to-backs in 1 week, and then the other one on the flip side is an early game with travel.
Yeah, the 5 o'clock start and the travel. Yeah. Apparently they got in just under the wire. There's some rule in the rule book. There's something with the NHLPA that there's like, I think it's 22 hours or something. And this is like right at that 22-hour point from the like doing the previous game to the next game.
So what would happen if they had a delay or something? Like, would they cancel the game or something? Like, what would happen?
I don't know. But there is a rule there, apparently, that when they do this schedule. But yeah, no, it's just dumb. Anyways, they had so many back-to-backs this season.
16 of them, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. So
which I actually felt like more than that. Like, I know last year they had 14, but maybe they were spread out a little bit more.
I think because at the end,
because of the condensed schedule, I guess it was just all jammed up. But
yeah. But no, the goalies, like they were great this week, and it's perfect timing going into the playoffs to have both of them going like this. And there's a couple of more games to go. So we'll see what happens.
All right, so we've got our number one to get to, and this time around it's Matthew Knies. So after the game versus Florida, Knies made some noise when he said the Leafs were a little bit soft in that game, which, hey, that was not a lie. They really, really were.
Yeah.
So he made even more noise the next night versus the Lightning, backing up those words with a hat trick. He played incredible in that game and put the money where his mouth was, and did the thing. So.
Yeah, no, that OT winner, the 2-on-1, like the between the legs pass over to Riley.
Know, it was crazy.
And then Riley chipped it over to Matthews. And then Vasilevsky obviously thought Matthews was going to shoot because he's a shooter. But he passed it over to Knies, wide open net. He just buried it. It was just great. And that was his first career overtime game winner. So for Matthew Knies. But all three goals were great. Like they
and all kind of different too. So anyways, it's interesting to see. And I don't know, considering he had some bad memories in that rink, like he's sure shaking those off because he plays pretty well in there now. So he's got a really good record against Tampa. So
sure. Yeah. Lightning killer is what I said.
100%.
On my posts on social media on our post. But no. So definitely Matthew Knies is deserving of our first star of the week.
Yeah.
And the highlight reel of the week too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So as we mentioned, it is our final podcast for this 2024-25 regular season. Don't worry. We will be back in the playoffs. But to put a little bow on it, because we can't wait for the playoffs to get going, to talk about the Leafs and where they're at, and also a little bit of soccer talk. For a third period segment, we welcome to the show the host of CBC Sports and Amazon Prime Monday Night Hockey, Andi Petrillo.
All right, so the NHL's regular season is coming to a close, and round one of the playoffs is just going to be a few days away. So we want to welcome to the show sports broadcaster Andi Petrillo to talk about the Leafs and get her thoughts on the Leafs season as a whole and the upcoming playoffs.
So when it comes to hockey, Leafs fans know Andi as the former host of TSN's Leafs Lunch. Today, she's co-host of Amazon Prime Monday Night Hockey and Thursday's Coast to Coast. She also covers many other major sports broadcasting events as a host with CBC Sports, and she is the host of the digital platform One Soccer as well. Thanks for coming on the show with us today, Andi.
Yeah. I am very excited about this. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you. All right, so let's get into it. Where do you think the Leafs made the biggest improvement this season? Because the season is ending in the next few days. So, what do you think is the best thing that's happened to the Leafs this year?
We can dive into a lot of players, and I feel like the most obvious answer is goaltending, and you can even look at defense. But I'm going to go even before that, and I'm going to say the biggest improvement, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, but it was with the coach. The biggest improvement is getting Craig Berube, because he just brought a different kind of mentality. He brings a different kind of pedigree. He speaks a different language that I feel a lot of these players just needed to hear at this point in their careers. He is defensive minded. So to me, that's why it's no surprise that we've seen an improvement overall in team defense. As much as the goalies have risen to the occasion, and I'm not going to take anything away from Joseph Woll and Anthony Stolarz, especially Stolarz, who I think has kind of surprised a lot of people. Woll's the number one guy. And if it wasn't for him getting injured to start the season, I don't know when we would have seen Stolarz, but we ended up seeing him right out of the gate. And suddenly people went, well, wait a second. This guy's actually pretty good, but he's been a backup for most of his life. And we know that both goalies have played the most ever. We know on that blue line as well, it's just another year of Jake McCabe looking really good. But obviously now you've got Tanev back there and Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Trade deadline, you go and you add Carlo. So I think that blue line's looking really, really good. But I think a lot of that is, Brad Treliving needed that first year to do a lot of observing and a lot of assessing. So once he kind of got, the lay of the land and he scoped it out, I think he became a little bit more comfortable in making the decisions of what he needed to improve on. But then the first thing just ended up being with his coach. So I'm going to go right to the beginning. I'm going to say the biggest improvement has been Craig Berube.
So he's pushing the right buttons, I guess you think, like on the players. Yeah. Yeah.
I think so. And it's hard to say because, Mike Babcock had pedigree. There's no doubt about that. But he also had these guys when they were first coming into the league. And I think they probably needed the coach to be alpha. But I think at some point, the players needed to bloom. And I think there became a power struggle in the room with Babcock and the likes of Matthews and Marner and Nylander, who were starting to take ownership of the team themselves. And when you have a coach who can be a little bit micromanaging like that, you can see some conflict, which is why I think Sheldon Keefe was perfect to come in when he did. But I also think that at some points, it kind of seemed like the players were running things too much, right? And you kind of needed a little bit more of a balance where I think Craig Berube knows when his voice needs to be heard, knows when the players need a little bit of freedom to run the room themselves. And oftentimes you hear that from really great coaches where it's like, what did you say to the team afterwards? It's like, I said nothing. And and I actually had this conversation with John Cooper not that long ago when the Tampa Bay Lightning were in town to play the Leafs. And we got into this whole conversation about, what makes a winning team, what makes a team win a Stanley Cup, all that kind of stuff. And he's like, first and foremost, health, right? He did talk about if you're injured, you're kind of screwed. But he did say that at the end of the day, he just didn't need to coach the team. He's like, it was kind of coaching itself. And that's when you know you've made it. So when your voice needs to be heard. And you also know when you just need to leave the guys alone and they can go in there because they know what needs to be done. So I feel like we've gotten to that place, here with Craig Berube. Obviously, the ultimate test will be the playoffs. But I think overall what we're seeing in the regular season is that's the kind of coach he is right now. And that's the kind of room he's created with the Leafs.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with that because that's the one thing that's sort of been the hallmark to me is what a stable season it's been. Like we usually have a lot of drama in Leafland and it's been very even keel. And I guess that comes from having an even keel coach, All right. Well, we still don't know who the Leafs are going to play in the first round of the playoffs, but what team do you think would be the best matchup for the Leafs in round one at this point?
Well, given the history that they've had with Florida and Tampa, here's the thing. I want them to win the division, right? So that's first and foremost. And with the way things are going, obviously that matchup looks to be with the Ottawa Senators, which makes me happy to see two Canadian teams, but also makes me sad to know that one Canadian team will be eliminated from the playoffs. But whatever. That's kind of how she is. But I think it would be great because it would be so nostalgic. Like I remember being in college, university, and it was like, the early 2000s and we were getting ready for playoffs and it was always like Leafs and Senators. It was almost like without fail, it just felt like the Leafs inevitably were always on this collision course to play the Sens. And the Sens typically had a better regular season and the Leafs would dispatch them all the time in the playoffs. And I remember always like having good little arguments with Sens fans in school over that because they're like, we have the better record. I'm like, yeah, but we take care of business in the playoffs. And so the Leafs did. I think it would be really nostalgic. And I think for broadcasters, you live for a matchup that has that kind of history because who doesn't want to dig into the archives and have Matt Sundin footage and Daniel Alfredson footage? And
That's
just
exactly what I was thinking about.
That's all I want is I want some good old footage. I want remember when Matt's got really upset and whipped his stick into the stands and then Alfredson went to do it the same way as if to make fun of him and he did. I love it. I love all that kind of stuff. So I just think from a broadcaster's perspective, it's a dream as well to be able to dip into history like that and bring back some old footage and some old rivalries.
And it's funny too, because Ottawa's coach is Travis Green, obviously, and he would in the Battle of Ontario on the other side, obviously, right?
Yes.
And with his line mates, Shane Corson and Darcy Tucker. So, yeah.
He knows it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What else do you think kind of needs to bounce the Leafs' way for them to have success this season?
The depth scoring to me is going to be huge because, and it kind of, a little bit of it is common sense. We all watch the playoffs and we all know that there's inevitably that third or fourth liner that ends up becoming a name. Whether it was a Nick Bonino or a Lars Eller, a Joel Ward, somebody, Brian Bickle's probably the most famous of them all for Chicago. But there's just somebody who's in the depth scoring, who steps up in the playoffs and becomes a hero. And it always stood out to me. And then one time I asked Sidney Crosby that, again, I always try to just figure out the key to winning. And he's like, well, he goes, the top guys inevitably will cancel out the top guys. That isn't to say they shouldn't show up and kind of figure out a way. I'm not trying to get like Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, Nylander off the hook here. But he's like, oftentimes it's such a battle with your top lines that you need your depth guys to step up. And I think in the past, when, the top guys for the Leafs have gone a little bit silent, like even last year, the power play went silent. It was like 1 for 23. So when your big guys aren't scoring, well, when your plan A isn't working, what's your plan B? And that's where I feel the Leafs have lacked the last little whiles. Where's that plan B? But now, and I know you got guys like Max Domi right now who is finding, the net. He's got a little bit of confidence. Somebody like Nick Robertson as well. Out of nowhere, suddenly like Steven Lorentz can, show up and score. So you have guys on the depth chart who've been able to find the back of the net. And I think that's going to be really key for the Leafs. And then obviously, like I mentioned, we know that their special teams are good. We know that they can get it done on the power play. But last year, 1 for 23, they have to be better. When they get that man advantage, you have to take advantage of it because the margin for error is so slim in the playoffs. And when you have an opportunity to be 5-on-4 or even a 5-on-3 and you're not scoring, that's a real problem. So to me, it's, and if the goalies can just play the way they've been playing, and hopefully they can keep up. I don't know if keep up is the word, but again, they're playing the most they've ever played.
Yeah.
I would say, Stolarz came on in relief, I believe, of Bobrovsky, in the playoffs last year. But either way, he's experienced more of a crazier playoff atmosphere. So he should have that experience. Wall obviously had that last year. But to me, it's more of the stamina and being able to be like, okay, this is the craziest you've ever played in your career. Can you hold on? Can you keep it up? Not keep up, keep it up. I think I needed that it in there. So that to me is it.
Do you think with the goalie, do you think that Stolarz will be well, I'm assuming Stolarz is going to be the starter, let's say, but whichever one it is.
It's a debate. It's a debate.
But do you think it's not going to be going like the way the Bruins did it last year where they started Swayman and then they went to Allmark for game 2 and then they went back to Swayman for the rest of the series against the Leafs? Do you think Berube is going to try that, or you think that, or would you, it would be...
Yeah, he strikes me as a guy who'll ride the hot hand because remember, even when he went on to win it, with Jordan Binnington, the way they turned things around in 2019, he rode Binnington. It's that's your hot hand. That's what you're going to go with. So I do think whoever he starts, if they're getting results, I think he sticks with them. But I don't there are people, because I've been asking the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's very much divided. There are people who are like, Joseph Woll's your number one guy. Again, that's what in the offseason, when he got his new deal, he makes more money than Stolarz. He was supposed to start in game 1. It was the injury that kept him out. He is Toronto's number one goalie. And he did perform very well when Stolarz was out with injury, right? We can't forget that either. So he is the number one guy. But Stolarz, in the time that he's played, has been phenomenal. And I think he's still in the top 3 even, maybe even top 2. I think he's just behind Connor Hellebuck when it comes to games played and then your save percentage and everything. He is right up there. So to be honest with you, I have no clue who's going to start. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Wall. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Stolarz. And I think, either decision would be a good one by Berube, but I do get the sense that he's going to ride the hot hand because when a goalie's dialed in, you can't mess with that. That's a special position. And I say that with a lot of love in my heart and sometimes a little bit of annoyance. But it is a special position. So you have to be very careful how you treat your goalies.
Yeah, that's for
Absolutely.
sure. Yeah. All right. So let's move on now. And this is kind of like after the season is over, I guess. But we want to get your thoughts on Mitch Marner and whether or not you think he will still be a Leaf next season.
I think for the first time in the year, because we've been talking about Mitch Marner not being a Leaf for quite a few seasons.
Yes.
But in my gut, I always knew he was going to remain a Leaf, right? I never felt that they were going to trade him. But now that they're in this position where his contract is up, I have to say I don't know. The fact that he's not willing to kind of like negotiate here in the middle of the season, right? Because if he was, then stuff would be happening, right? His agent would be in communication with Brad Treliving, but the fact that the two parties have basically said they're not doing anything, why? Well, that leads me to believe the player wants to go to market. Doesn't mean he's not going to resign again. If you remember that year that Steven Stamkos wanted to go to market, we all thought for sure he was coming to the Leafs, and he ended up re-signing with Tampa. So that's not to say that he wouldn't re-sign with the Leafs again, but I think he really wants to see who would court him and what would that number be. And we know he wants to make money. I'm never going to begrudge a player for doing that. I think he knows that Matthews is making a ton. Nylander is making a ton. Tavares is showing no signs of slowing down. So I don't think, and this is the other big one, what kind of hometown discount is he really going to give the Leafs? I think he'll still, I don't think he'll be making what he's making now, but there are a lot of people that are like, oh, I think his next contract will see him make $2-3 million. I'm like, are you kidding me?
No.
There's no way.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
No way.
Especially the way he's, so if they thought they were going to get that kind of discount, like he's probably still going to make around 7. Who knows, right? Like he's a phenomenal player still for the Leafs. Then you also have the curious case of Matthew Knies, who, by the way, is a restricted free agent. And what do we talk about all season long with the Edmonton Oilers and the St. Louis Blues? The Oilers should have matched the offer sheets on Holloway and Broberg. If you're another team, I don't think you're doing it just to stick it to the Leafs, although you could, but you're doing it because Knies is a phenomenal player. You could offer sheet Knies. So if you're the Leafs, you're now also in a position where you're like, who do you sign first? Knies or Marner? So I think Marner also knows this. I think he knows that the Leafs also need to sign Knies. So when you've got all these other guys making a ton of money, you know Tavares is not going to be taking a huge cut because he's still performing. You know Knies is loved by team and fans alike. You're probably sitting there going, well, what kind of money's left for me? Like what's happening here, right? So I think he does want to explore the market and see if anything is appealing. Yeah. But I think a lot of it will also be dictated to by the playoffs. And what I mean by that is by the fan base, right? I think Marner, and I feel for him a little bit here. And, I've shared this story before in his first year with the Leafs. I remember having a good chat with him in the room. And I don't know how we got onto it, but we got onto social media. And I'm like, how are people treating you there? He's like, I love it. People are great and say great things. And I was like, okay, kid, like give it a few more years. Like it'll be over pretty soon. Got to be very careful the way you use social media. And he kind of looked at me like, yeah, right. And then what ended up happening when he negotiated his first contract, as we know, his father had to cancel his Twitter account because of the harassment his dad was getting. He had to step away from Twitter, right? And then when he was like walking down the street, he shared stories of like Leafs fans just yelling at him. And Mitch Marner, to me, has never been the same after that. The way he talks to the media, he's got a wall up and
like he has a chip on his shoulder. Like even the other night, I guess they talked to him after the game and he just lately he's been kind of like, it's like 50-50. Sometimes he's kind of having fun, but then other nights it's like he has a chip on his shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like he's combative, right? He's a little bit like, because I think he's been burnt, right? Like I think he's been hurt and we can sit here and debate all we want. Like, well, did he bring it on himself? Is that par for the course? Did he deserve it? Did he not? Just like whatever. The bottom line is these are human beings we're still talking about. So when you come at them, it's going to hurt. And if that's something that he's still thinking about, maybe he wants a change of scenery. This is me completely speculating, but this is just like all of it is to say for the first time in the years that we've been talking about, will Marner be a Toronto Maple Leaf or not? This is the first year where I truly don't know. from a financial perspective, because we know he wants to get paid. He's having another incredible year, but can the Leafs afford it? And, does he want to change the scenery because he does feel like people are on him all the time, right? Like it kind of matters. So this goes back to an old conversation we used to have too, even before John Tavares signed with the Leafs. We're like, why don't any hometown kids play for the Leafs? Like, where are the Ontario kids? And I remember a former player saying to me, you're probably not going to get an Ontario kid playing for the Leafs because they would be highly scrutinized. And I was like, we want the hometown kid. And then, of course, Johnny T came on board. Mitch obviously, came through the ranks even before that. But I get it now, because when you're the hometown kid, there is a different pressure. There's a different level of scrutiny sometimes too.
Like you're seeing it with Lawton too, like his start is not what anyone hoped it would be, and mostly him,
Yeah.
They wear a lot, like, David Clarkson, like another classic guy that, came in and, could just not make it work here. Like so it is different.
Hopefully Lawton, whatever, like even if it's for next season, he's playing better the last few games anyways.
Yeah, he's getting more comfortable. And he's a good, this is something that I have to rely on former players telling me, but they say he is amazing in the room. Like he is like that glue guy.
That's what we heard. Yeah.
All right. So I think we're talking a little bit off the top that you cover a myriad of sports, and we know one of your favorites is soccer, and you cover that for One Soccer. So there was a lot of drama recently, late last month, at the Nations League finals with Alfonso Davies. He had to come out of the game at the 12-minute mark. Later, he was diagnosed with an ACL tear. His home club, Bayern Munich, was furious with Team Canada's handling of the situation and even threatened legal action. So we just wanted to get your take on that. And also, do you think that this will harm the relationship with the Canadian men's team with their superstar as we are heading into that World Cup year, right?
Hold on a second. It's just water. I needed it to be something stronger. I think emotions ran very high, and I think it was so first and foremost, it's very unfortunate for Alfonso Davies to suffer an ACL injury. That goes without saying. That takes a long time to recover from. Obviously, he's going to have the best physiotherapist, the best, training, athletic therapist, like you name it. He's going to have the best around him, but it's still just I did my ACL. And not that I'm trying to say that I'm like this pro athlete that would have the support around me that he's going to have. I don't have anywhere near the muscle mass either that he has. But man, an ACL really stinks, and it's painful, and it's just like, come on, right? So I feel for the player. That goes without saying. But I just wish that his agent didn't get so emotional and come out the way he did, because I think it created this domino effect. I think it opened the door and gave Bayern permission to then come out as aggressively as they did. From what I'm hearing, like the legal action isn't going to happen, but that's usually the case. When somebody is so overly emotional, it becomes a domino effect, and then other people get all emotional. Everyone's all emotional, and everyone's screaming and yelling, and then afterwards, the agent comes out with a far more level-headed comment, but by then the damage had been done. And, Alfonso's been very quiet throughout this whole process. It's, I don't know if that's because he wants the agent to do the talking on his behalf. Maybe he feels the way, the agent, maybe he's speaking through his agent. And if that's how he feels, we have to accept that. Or maybe he's just trying to lay low because his agent and his pro club are just tossing grenades, and he's like, stop it, right? Like, who knows? Who knows? Because the player hasn't talked. Jesse Marsch has done a bunch of stuff. He seems to, believe that conversations are happening behind the scenes that he thinks are positive. And I hope so, because you're right. I mean, there's a home World Cup that's going to be here in over a year's time, so it's not that far away. He's the face of the team. He's the captain of the team. He's one of the best players on the team. He's going to be also one of, the most marketable player on the team. You're going to see posters of him everywhere. And you would hate to think
lots of jersey sales.
Lots of jersey sales are going to happen. And you would just hate to think that there is any kind of rift yes, between him and the coach, but more than anything, you would hate for there to be any kind of rift between him and the players. Because when agents and pro clubs and all this kind of bickering is going on, let's not forget that there's a room of teammates that are sitting there going, what is going on right now? Because it becomes a sideshow, and your teammates don't want a sideshow. So I wouldn't be surprised, and I would hope that Alfonso Davies has also spoken to his teammates, and he's talked to them to be like, listen, I got you. There's nothing wrong with me and the coach, or if there is something going on with me and the coach, it's not going to interfere with me and you guys in the room. Like, he needs to have a word with his teammates, and he needs to reassure them that whatever, let's call it garbage going on the outside, between everyone getting all emotional and all the bickering and all the threatening of lawsuits, like, he has to reassure his teammates that's not going to come in the room. So that to me is the big one, because if the teammates feel like Alfonso's on his own little island doing his own little thing, which by the way, he kind of already is. You mentioned jersey sales. He worked out a side deal on his own, by the way, to get his own money for jerseys that are sold of his. His teammates don't have that. Right. So you have to think there's already other things Alfonso has done to look out for Alfonso, that his teammates now want to be like, yo, we got to make sure you've got our back here too. So that to me is the bigger concern more than anything, because coaches and players fighting is nothing new. In fact, it's like, oh, really? Tell me something I don't know about. Like, do you think every, player in there is also like thinking Craig Berube is great every single day? No. Like, tell me a player who loves their coach every single day. Like, that's old news. But you got to get on with your teammates. You have to make sure that you are not a distraction. You have to make sure you're not the reason why things come undone in that room. So that to me is the bigger concern I have, is I just want to make sure Davies and his teammates are still good.
So what is, like, obviously there's going to be a long time healing, like, and probably we're looking into like early next year before he's probably playing with the team again, I would think. Like, what's like a point where we can look to in the future to kind of...
It's a tough one, because I mean, if you some guys, something happens, right? Like, you just never know what ends up happening in their recovery or whatever that they do. And I know I'm comparing apples and oranges here. They're completely different sports and completely different positions. But I thought Thatcher Demko, right, for the Vancouver Canucks would have been back earlier and probably would have picked up where he left off. But, then he ended up having a setback again with his knee. And I get it, right? We're talking about goalie, different kind of mechanisms and movements, but you just never know how it's going to heal. And then you have a guy like Zach Hyman. Remember when he tore his ACL with the Leafs? Yeah,
I mean, that's probably the reason why he's not on the team. Because really, the age he's at, the age he was at, no one thought he was going to come back from that and really be as good as he is.
And he was dominant, right? You're right. He earned his contract with the Edmonton Oilers. He priced himself out of the Toronto Maple Leafs market. But so who knows? Who knows when a target will be for Alfonso Davies and being able to come back? But to your point, I think if there's no need to rush him either, if there's no like big event, especially for the national team, I think he's on Bayern's timeline now. It goes without saying, obviously, he wants to be there for the World Cup, but when he gets back into action and when they're going to play him, to me, I feel like that's all in Bayern Munich's hands right now, of when they feel that it's going to be the right time to put him in and start getting his legs under him. But yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to be touching anything for the next couple months, but maybe halfway through the summer, end of summer, because again, when we think of ACL, we think of like us who aren't pro athletes, but like, his body type is already at a level of strength, and now he's got the incredible support around him. So yeah, he could be back in the summer for sure.
All right. Do you have time for one more question?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right. So like we said off the top, it was, I guess you're a host on Amazon Prime, and it's the first year of the NHL on Amazon Prime. Can you share with us a highlight moment for you from this season? If there's one or a few or a couple.
Yeah, I know. You know what? I the highlight has been working with a really good crew. I think like everyone is so amazing, from John Forsland to Jody Shelley, Shane Knighty, Thomas Hickey, Adnan Verk, Blake Bolden. Everyone we're all on the same page. We're trying to, we're not reinventing broadcasting or reinventing how you bring, hockey to the fans.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Well,
I guess about that.
that's
I think that there's something, and maybe it is the chemistry that you guys all have. I don't know what it is, but I have to say, just it's fresh. There's something there.
Yeah.
And so it's been really fun to watch.
I appreciate you saying, because I think that's what it is. It's like, again, hockey talk is hockey talk, but how we're doing it together and how we're doing it as a team, I feel, like it's a little refreshing. It's a little bit fun. Obviously, credit goes out to the behind the scenes crew when it comes to the amount of cameras and camera angles. And I know that really elevates the viewer experience. And I know that they really love that. And, the highlight to me is also being on location. Because as we know, like, our industry is forever changing, and it kind of is what it is, and costs are, not cheap.
Yeah.
So a lot of people do things from studio. And now a lot of times you have to do things from studio because you have multiple games going on at once. So you'll have people on location, but your studio needs to be like the main center of everything. And what's kind of refreshing too with Amazon is we just do the game of the week. So it allows us to be on location, and it allows like the panel to be there, not just your rink side and your play-by-play, but it just everyone is there. And to be able to get the FaceTime, like all the time that you do a game, you're getting FaceTime with players, whether it's on camera or just behind the scenes, being able to talk with them, pick their brain. Sometimes you lose out on that when you're just like in the four walls of a studio all the time. So that's been really refreshing to take the show on the road. And it's also, for me personally, it's been a really cool ride. I know that I've been a part of every hockey broadcast on every different broadcast genre. I've covered junior A hockey on cable television. Mm-hmm. So York Region, Ontario, so only available in that district, but cable TV. I went to Leafs TV, which was a specialty channel.
Right.
Hockey Night, which was network TV. And now Prime, which is streaming digital. So I've done the cable, I've done the specialty, I've done the network, and I've done the streaming. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
So it's kind of been pretty cool to be part of that kind of evolution of broadcasting as well. But it's a fantastic crew. So the whole season alone has just been one big highlight.
Another thing that I think, the fact that you mentioned that you guys are on location, the thing that I find the most is you finally get that connection between, the team and the fans, because like you see the fans behind when you guys are doing your intermission stuff. I love the warm-up cam that you guys have. That brings people, especially in our market. There's a lot of people that don't get to go to the game and they don't get to see that. Yeah. So I think those are some of the things too, is that you're kind of bringing the audience into the game experience that way too.
Well, what's really cool about the home ice access is, so our main producer is a gentleman by the name of Mark Askin, and he was my main producer at Leafs TV.
I was just going to say, that name sounds familiar.
Yeah, he created that. We had that during Leafs TV. We also had that. I think it was called Countdown to Puck Drop. Like the actual, like now we have like a Countdown to Puck Drop logo, but on Leafs TV, it was Countdown to Puck Drop. And then if you recall, it would either be me or it would be Paul Hendrick. And this is what we're working towards for Amazon. I'm trying to get them to do this. But part of that Countdown to Puck Drop was Paul Maurice would come out. He was the head coach at the time. And we would actually do a live interview with the coach, part of that countdown. Right. So all the players would come. Same thing. You would see people getting their popcorn. You would see people in their seats. You'd see players during warm up. And then when they would come out for the game, Paul Maurice would make his way to either me or Paul Hendrick and do a live interview during that. So it wasn't like this big it was a much shorter version, because we did have a pregame show, but it was a much shorter version to Countdown. And it was really cool. So Mark Askin was like, well, let's make this bigger and actually make it like a 30-minute thing where people feel like they're also getting to their seats. They're in the arena. So that we all love that. We all love home ice access.
Oh yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So do you think that they're going to roll out even more next year? Like, do you have any insight?
I don't. Well, I can say it'll most likely be the same, because if you recall, at the beginning when all of this was announced, Amazon in partnership with Rogers took the final 2 years of the Rogers deal. So the final the final Mondays, right?
Okay.
So I think it'll be a lot more of the same next year. So the Mondays, and I believe, Coast to Coast will be back as well on Thursdays. After that, couldn't tell ya. Well, I will find out just as everyone else will find out. But next year, I think is still part of it's part of that original 2-year deal. So it'll most likely be more of the same.
Well, that's awesome. Well, we look forward to watching that.
We really enjoy it. I love seeing the Monday night games, and the Leafs have a great record on Monday night. Amazon,
yes, we
Prime
do.
They sure do. Yes, they sure do.
Yeah, could use it in the playoffs.
I know. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Maybe I'll move my Felix Potvin poster just beside my bed and just do my prayers before bed at night.
Anything can help. Anything can help.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, Andi. Well, we cannot thank you enough for making time to be on with us today. And we thank you so much for being our guest. And everyone, look for Andi talking hockey and sports on Amazon Prime, CBC, and of course, the digital platform onesoccer.ca. Thank you so much. And
thanks, Andi.
Hope to talk to you again at some point.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
All right. So yeah, that was it was great to have Andi on the show. She's so upbeat and I don't know. I loved the comments that she had about Craig Berube. When she was looking at the
it was a really good perspective that she had, even just going all the way back through Babcock and how basically the different coaches that they had for the different stages that the team is in, how it's kind of worked out that way.
Yeah. And she talked about John Cooper too, like other coaches in the league, and how the story, which was really interesting, the one that he said that he knew that he coached the team well when they started to do everything on their own. He didn't need to be there. It was almost like it's programmed into his team sort of thing. And so that was interesting to see, that winning type of culture. Obviously Tampa had it too. They've won a couple of Stanley Cups, and now, you can see that building with Berube too, because even in today's broadcast during the Carolina Hurricanes broadcast, they were talking about how Matthews actually said it. He said in his interview, he was saying all they're looking at is playing the right way. And when you say that, that's what Craig Berube says too. And the patience, you talk about patience, that's all he says too. It's not they're if they're down 1-0, they're not panicking, and even if they're ahead 1-0,
and you can see that there's just a different body language, different demeanor, and I think that's really why there hasn't been as many ups and downs. And we talked a little bit about that in the interview as well. It's been a very even keel season. And that's kind of what you want, I think, going into the playoffs for sure. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
The other funny thing, though, I like too, one other thing is when she took the drink of water from when you were asking her the soccer question, and she said, "Give me a minute," and she was "It is water, right? Who knows? You never know." But that was funny. I like that. Yeah.
I just love how she really knows her stuff. She just can pull out, different statistics, and the amount of people that, in the business that she's talked to, she's got so many different experiences to pull off of. And she even mentioned it, that she's basically, worked through every different league, know, and has been on all these different broadcasts, from junior all the way up. And now she's doing, and for different type of, different media types too, like these local broadcasts for cable TV to now a streaming site, so, she's just got a very broad depth of experience. And I think, that adds a lot to what she brings on all the different, jobs that she works at. She's like a busy woman. And we're so grateful to her really for making the time to be on with us, because she's got a lot of stuff going on. She we found out after, she just finished doing like a soccer show just as she came on with us. So
yeah.
Anyways, we thank Andi very much for being on with us. So
yeah, it was great. It was great. All right. So the Leafs now have 2 games to close out the season versus the Sabres in Buffalo on Tuesday night. And then the final game of the regular season at home versus the Detroit Red Wings on Thursday night. So the 2 things basically are clinching the division and getting Marner, 3 things, I guess, getting Marner to 100 points, and Matthews needs 1 goal to get to 400 career goals. So those are 3 things. Division obviously is number 1. It's down to 1, I think, for the
I think that's the magic number now.
The magic number is 1. So be nice to get it done on Tuesday so we could rest some more players on Thursday. But yeah, so that's basically what it's come down to now for these final 2 games of the regular season. And then obviously we'll know who will be playing for the first round of the playoffs, which it kind of still looks like it's going to be Ottawa. But
I really don't think that anybody's going to catch them. And I suppose the only thing that could happen is I guess New Jersey could fall into that spot potentially, maybe. I don't know.
No, New Jersey's already they're going to be playing Carolina.
Oh, they are. So that's set then. So I really don't think that.
No, it's only Montreal that could flip it, but
they're too far back now.
Yeah, and the last couple of games they haven't played well. So they lost to both. They lost a game versus Ottawa, and then they lost to us in overtime. So,
and I guess it's possible that Florida could fall down far enough that.
Actually, I don't know, because I know they play Tampa next. Actually, Tampa and Florida, they play next. But
that's interesting.
Yeah, that's the next game. But we're just pulling up our schedule here. The standings to see. But what are they? Oh, here they are.
Yeah, Florida's got 98 points. Yeah, no, I don't think Ottawa's going to catch them.
No, because they're 4 points. They're 4 points ahead. So it looks like
that's the most likely thing.
Yeah, the Battle of Ontario 20 years later. So that'll be a lot of fun.
And we'll be seeing Alfredson probably on the sidelines there. I wonder if Mats will show up.
I don't know. We'll see.
It'd be interesting.
We know Darcy Tucker and the rest of some of the Leafs. Ty Domi will probably be there too, and watching Max. And
let them in the building if they want to go all the way there.
And Max,
it'll be interesting to see how many Leaf fans they let go there.
That's true. And I love Max Domi's comments saying that they're going to be ready. So Leafs Nation better be ready. And we're ready. I said, right? It's just you won't have a problem with the upper bowl anyways, right?
No.
I mean, we don't know about what's going on in the lower bowl. But
you know what, though? And somebody, I think it was on Leaf Talk after the Habs game, they were talking about this, actually, how the crowd sounded so into it, because we're playing meaningful games against Montreal right down to the wire here. And you could hear it in the crowd because, there's a lot of Hab fans that get in the building. And then, there's the dueling cheers and stuff like that. And I think that you're going to get much of the same if Ottawa's there. That's going to probably bring out the best in both fan bases.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it will be interesting, though, to see how many Leaf fans get in the building in Ottawa. I wonder if they're going to somehow be controlling tickets, but we'll see what happens.
There are a lot of Leaf fans that live in that area, too, so they'll be able to get in.
It's not the Leaf fans' fault because it's the Ottawa Senator subscribers, they're season seat holders. They're selling them to Leaf fans, so... Whatever.
Well, they guess they figure they can make some money off
the money, right? And
but after, I don't know, I wouldn't do that. If our team, God forbid,
it's the first time in I don't know how many years,
7 years or something like
Ottawa's
that.
been in the playoffs, and and if you're following that team and you're finally in, and you're gonna not go to the first
what kind of fan are you?
Exactly.
I know it's a primo opportunity to make some coin, but really, if you're a true blue,
We wouldn't do that.
true red and white fan, I would say, you should be showing up there for your team.
Yeah.
So anyway.
All right. So we'll be back next week with our first show of the 2024-25 Stanley Cup playoffs.
I can't even believe it.
Yeah, it's finally here. And you won't want to miss any of our playoff coverage. So just hit that follow button wherever you are listening to our show. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. And you can also find us on the Believe Network at believe.com, BLEAV.com. We would also love to hear from you. Be sure to leave us a rating or review. Let us know what you think of the show. Feedback is so important from our listeners, and we thank you for taking the time.
And another way to help us out is by visiting our Ko-fi page at Ko-fi.com. You can follow us there. And if you choose to, you can support us by buying us a coffee. Any donation goes towards helping us produce the show and making it even better for you. You can find the link to our Ko-fi page on our show notes or in any of our social media profile pages.
And as always, thank you to our healthcare workers and first responders for all that they do.
And we thank you, as always, for listening and watching Ladies Talking Leafs. We'll see you in the playoffs. Till next time, go Leafs, go.
Do you believe?